Okay, well, let's kick off. This is an exciting time for Simna. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon for our webinar, Starting Where You Are. My name is Lisa McGee, and I am Simna's lead doer and connector, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this session today. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country, of the country that we are all on today. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the lands that we are gathering on and pay all of our respects to elders past, present and emerging. I join you today from Darawal land in Sydney's east. I acknowledge that this land was never ceded and reaffirm my commitment and all of our commitments to the recognition, respect, inclusion and well-being of Australia's First Nations people. A little bit about Simna, for those of you who are new to us. Simna is a growing learning network of members across Australia who believe that understanding and measuring social impact is key to ensuring that all Australians, our communities and the environment achieve the best possible outcomes in life. We're not just about the not-for-profit sector, we're interested in the products and services delivered by all organisations, be that for purpose, for profit or government bodies. And finally, welcome. We are for everyone. Whether you're experienced in impact measurement or new, we are on this journey together. Thank you. Over to you, Des.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm just going to briefly go over some housekeeping and a little bit of the thought behind this session today. So you will have seen when you were admitted that we are recording, and you are also on mute for right now. We will be more interactive in this session as the invite describes. So there will be breakout rooms, at which point we would ask, if at all possible, please unmute yourself and turn on your camera, just to allow that interaction to be more rich and focused. This session, it's the second time we're running this, led by Katrina, and it kind of came in response to, in West Australia, our community wanted something practical that they could use for wherever they were when they were starting their impact measurement journey. Interestingly, we kind of thought, how can we try to practice what we preach in a way and do some kind of measurement or have some rigor behind it, which led to the survey that was sent out with you, or to you, in your reminder email. And we are quite lucky to have Katrina facilitating, as she also does this with the Center for Social Impact, teaching people how to get started. So a lot of expertise. So thanks for being here. And with that, I will turn over to Katrina.
Thanks, Desiree, and welcome everyone. It's exciting to see so many of you here. I am on Wajak Budja in Western Australia, and also pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So we're going to start with a little slideshow. So I'm just going to talk to you for around about 5 to 10 minutes. With a very kind of brief introduction to defining outcomes measurement and some of the processes that are involved in that. We're then going to attempt to do a whole group exercise, which could get potentially very noisy and squeaky on Zoom, but we'll see how we go. We might use the chat. And then we're going to send you into breakout rooms and invite you to consider one or two of the 4 domains that were on the tool that we sent out yesterday. And then again, we'll come back to the larger group and identify some of the shared learning. So this is very much an opportunity for some peer learning. You know, the very fact that you're here says that by definition you have started somewhere, yeah, because you're here because there's at the very least some interest, if not action and progress towards embedding outcomes measurement in your organisation, or in particular programs within your organisation. So we're beginning therefore with an assumption that everybody has something to share and something to offer to the shared learning experience. So my role, just briefly, so I'm the Manager of Research and Evaluation at Wansley, which is a West Australian-based not-for-profit organisation. We provide services in out-of-home care, parenting services, leaving care, for grandparents who are raising their grandchildren, mental health services, and every form of early learning that it is possible to deliver, we are involved in. And so I'm responsible for developing and implementing a research strategy across the entire organisation. That includes doing evaluation and includes doing outcome measurement work also. And as Des mentioned, I work for the Centre for Social Impact at UWA as well, delivering a 2-day workshop on outcome measurement for the community services sector. For the WA people, we have one coming up face-to-face at the end of October, and we're also doing an online version in November as well, so you can check the Centre for Social Impact website for that. All right, so okay. So let's start with a little bit of definition. So outcome measurement is a systematic way to assess the extent to which a program has achieved its intended results. So it seems a fairly straightforward definition. So I'm going to pick up on a couple of the key words there. So the first key word for me is that it's something that is systematic. So it's something that is planned. It has some rigor behind it. So we're using perhaps methods and methodologies and processes that are known. It has some logic to it as well. And it's something that, you know, it has a beginning, a middle and an end, you know, so we're doing it in a very purposeful way as well. So we're using it to assess something. So I think often, you know, we're looking for outcome measurement and other forms of measurement, including evaluation and research, to confirm what we already, you know, think we know about our program. But we're using outcome measurement to make some kind of assessment, you know, so we need to remain curious, because actually what we're just trying to find out, you know, what impact our program is having, what change it's creating. So remaining curious throughout that assessment process is really important. So we're also, related to that, we're looking at the extent to which a program has achieved its intended results. So we're actually looking for progress. We're also then, when we're looking at the extent to which it has achieved its results, we can have a look then at what's working, what's not working. So it is usually, outcome measurement is usually something that is done at a program level. Not something that's done, you know, at a team level or an organisational level. And we're looking at whether or not it has achieved its intended results. So that phrase intended results says that we know what it is that we're aiming for. Yeah, so we have the outcomes that we're looking to achieve articulated somewhere. And I'm going to imagine that many of you would be familiar with the program logic. So very often that's the place where our intended results, our outcomes are named and articulated. All right, and so the main questions that we address in outcome measurement are what has changed as a result of this program? So is it attitudes, is it behaviour, is it accessibility, is it knowledge, is it understanding? Has this program made a difference? You know, perhaps one of the greatest struggles really for, particularly for community and human and social services is, you know, that attribution. But, you know, are we able to say in some way that it's our program that has made that difference? And then how are the lives of people, communities, the population it is that we're working to achieve those outcomes with, how are their lives better as a result of our program? So you see there a reference from the National Resource Centre. So they have this great guidebook measuring outcomes. You've got the link there. It's a really accessible resource to use. They cover, you know, getting ready to do outcomes measurement, preparing a program logic, as well as outlining a range of methods that you can use. And they have a number of checklists for things that you needed to have attended to, you know, in order for those processes to be rigorous and thorough and helpful. So that's a resource that I would highly recommend to you. All right, so just want to differentiate briefly between these three different but related processes, and I've got, you know, some pictures of different family forms there, because I kind of think that these three things, you know, we can get quite worried about what the differences are. I kind of think they're the same, they're members of the same family. So they're different, but they're related, yeah? So outcome measurement, as I said, is really, you know, is program based, and we're looking at the results of that particular program. Evaluation kind of is, you know, still often at a program level, but it can also look at processes, and it's really about assessing the quality, the merit, or the worth of your program or your process. Whereas research is about discovering and creating new knowledge. So we wanted to differentiate that in part because I think that, you know, these things can often be seen as being the, you know, the domain of the expert, or, you know, an exclusive club with its own language and its own processes, but, you know, inviting you into the club and to know that, you know, yeah, the three things are related, you know, but outcome measurement is certainly very much something that's attainable when we're looking at a program level. So, you know, on my previous slide, you know, it said that outcome measurement answers three questions. Fundamentally, I think it answers this one question of so what? Yeah, so, you know, if we think about, I'll give you an example. So my professional association often publishes a list of what they call their impact over the last 12 months. So they talk about how many new members they've had. They talk about, you know, how many posts they've done on Facebook. They talk about how many times they've been mentioned in the media, how many letters they've written to politicians, those kinds of things. So that's all, you know, like that's all very interesting, and that's very important to know, you know, is kind of what processes and activities they have been involved in. But those numbers, those outputs on their own still beg the question of so what, right? So, you know, the growth in membership, so they report that as a number. What we don't get there is, excuse me, sorry. So let's say their membership has grown by 100 in the past year. So if they were aiming for 20 new members in the last 12 months, then growth of 100 is fantastic. If they were aiming for 500 new members, then a growth of 100 is, you know, is only 20% of the way there. So raises some different questions about why those targets weren't achieved. So we always need kind of some point of comparison really to be able to answer in part that so what question. The other challenge for the professional association that I'm a part of is that they have an aging membership. So new graduates aren't, excuse me, sorry. So new, apologies. So new graduates and younger people aren't joining the association. So again, simply the number of new members doesn't address whether they are, you know, meeting some of those issues, some of those gaps in their membership. Similarly, in terms of, you know, the number of media mentions and social media posts, you know, again, very interesting, you know, very important in terms of recording their activity and their output, but so what? You know, did they get any engagement on those social media posts? Who did they get engagement with? Did that engagement result in any other kind of action or any other kind of change? You know, so you can ask the so what question when you're looking at what it is that you're already reporting. You know, so if you're just reporting flat numbers, you know, I think there is really then a so what question around, well, what do those numbers tell us in terms of, are there any benchmarks? Were there any targets? you know, what do those numbers tell us about, you know, the who and the what and the how we were aiming for as well. All right, so this is where we get a little bit more into the getting started bit. So this is, you know, one of many outcome measurement pathways that you will find. I really like this one because I think it's really, you know, it shows how these processes are constantly intersecting and how they inform one another, but really puts some emphasis as well on the creating space. And in the 2-day workshop that we do in the Centre for Social Impact, we actually spend day one just looking at this very first box around creating space. And often people come, and perhaps you've come today as well, looking for some particular tools and strategies around the planning and around the doing. So I think often we're looking for the doing, and recognising that without having the commitment from, you know, important people in your organisation, whether that be the leadership, whether that be practitioners, whether that be service users, without having the culture and without having some resources allocated to the work, that really the doing, you know, is going to be very, very difficult. So the first and the really important, I think, thread in creating space is getting to the why. So what is your purpose in wanting to do outcome measurement? Who is going to benefit from you doing outcome measurement? And how does your why connect to your organisation's vision and mission and values? And it's very often in that connection to vision, mission and values that we improve the engagement, particularly of practitioners, yeah? Because they come to work to, you know, make changes with and for the people that they serve. So, you know, if we can talk about outcome measurement in terms of how it's going to benefit those who use our services, those who engage in our services, then that can improve our engagement from not only practitioners, but from the people who access our services as well. Having a culture that is receptive to outcome measurement also looks like having a learning culture, you know, so a culture where mistakes are allowed to be made because they're seen as a learning opportunity, a culture where there is the opportunity to take risks and try new things. Outcome measurement itself might be the new thing that you're trying in your organisation. And that culture really does, you know, require some leadership around outcome measurement in your organisation. So, you know, hopefully at the very least that looks like buy-in from the leadership team, some role modelling from them about engagement with outcome measurement and use of outcome measurement results as well. You know, but there'll also be, you know, other champions and influencers within your organisation as well. And so that brings us to engagement. So one of the really important things for us at Wansley has been, you know, around bringing practitioners along, right? Because it's practitioners that are doing the work in the programs. It's very often then the practitioners that we are asking to actually collect the data as well. But even more so, I think sometimes practitioners have been wary that this means that their practice is going to be scrutinised and exposed, which goes back then to the issue of culture and that it's, you know, that it's a safe place to learn and make mistakes and all of those kinds of things. But we really want to demonstrate to practitioners, you know, how outcome measurement is going to be used to improve services and outcomes for, in our case, the children and families that we work for. So an important process for us, as I started to say, was to identify who our champions were going to be amongst the practitioner group. So people who could, you know, bring others along and say, you know, look, I think this is really important. This is why I value it. This is how I'm going to use it. So as well as, you know, those kind of, you know, your formal leadership group, your champions who are part of the leadership of that, of course, you need to engage the people who are going to do the work, you know, do the outcome measurement work, and those who are going to make decisions and take actions based on what your outcome measurement is telling you as well. And then, of course, you know, and look, and this is, you know, I think this is the magic key that people are looking for often is around that unlocking resources. So, you know, it is something that will require, you know, at the very least time, you know, perhaps other resources as well, depending if you want to access and use particular tools. But you certainly do need to create some space, you know, in human resources, in time, in developing expertise and knowledge and understanding of outcome measurement. And so, yes, it is going to require some commitment of both time and energy. So that's the bit that we're kind of really focusing on today, is that creating space, the tool that you received yesterday, and hopefully have had an opportunity to look at, even if you hadn't had the opportunity to complete, because that really is about accessing those spaces and those things that, you know, really need to be, I mean, not necessarily in place, but certainly in train, in development, in order for then the planning and the implementation to be able to be built in and to be able to be built in successfully. All right, so this is going to be our, as I said, potentially noisy and squeaky attempt at doing a whole of group activity. So, if you were to walk into an organisation that does indeed have a thriving outcome measurement culture and practices in place, what are you going to be able to see in that organisation? What's it going to feel like? What's the, you know, what's the atmosphere? I was talking to someone about the castle the other night. What's the vibe of the place? What does it sound like? So what are the conversations that you're hearing? What's the language that people are able to use? What can you touch? So what can you put your hand on that shows you that there's a thriving outcome measurement culture and practice alive in this organisation? And who is there? You know, so who's a part of that? Who's a part of that process? So I'm just going to come out of the slideshow, because what I've actually got is some blank slides here to populate with your ideas about, you know, what does it look like? What does it sound like? What kinds of things are you hearing? What's the language? What does it feel like? Who's there and what can you touch? So I'm happy for people to, now actually I can't see, so I can't see if people would like to put their hand up. So maybe one of my co-hosts could see if people put their hand up, or if people would like to participate via chat to tell us what you think you would see, hear, feel.
If you'd like to talk, please just unmute yourself. You should be able to do that, or we've got the chat function, whichever works best for you.
I'll kick it off because it drives me crazy. I'm probably going to see some sort of chart on the wall with some sort of indicators.
Yep, charts. Yep, so, you know, demonstrating, you know, results. Thank you. Sorry, I can't see who's speaking either, so otherwise I'd call you by name.
Katrina, more comments in the chat. We can see and touch things on the walls, similar, the posters with indicators, lots of post-it notes.
Yep.
The walls are colourful, most definitely. Numbers and information on the walls. Oh, they're coming in now.
I think there'd be marketing material that has sort of shows the human side and talks about impacts with real faces and real clients.
What I was just going to say, because one time what I've got caught up in New South Wales, because we've been going through this through our state government funding, is often the comments made, we forgot to get the clients or the people we assist.
Yes.
Somewhere. And that's often that you can get driven up in that. With trying to get to the outcomes, with forgetting about the people that you're actually there serving.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, which is why I think, again, that connection of your outcome measurement activity to your values, your vision, and your mission is really important, because hopefully those things have people at the centre, and it is yeah, really important in terms of engaging practitioners in particular. All right, what's it going to sound like? What kinds of things are you going to hear?
Number of comments in the chat. The leadership actively listening to staff. So lots of active listening happening. Lots of people asking why, what was different this time? And inquiring in a safe way.
I'm going to add robust into safe.
Conversations in the room that connect practice and outcomes, talking about the links between the two.
Right.
And team meetings, share feedback on outcomes and participant progress. A common language is used.
Yeah. I think, I mean, so the Centre for Social Impact have had a research program that they've been engaged in for about 5 years now, I think, around assessing the use of outcomes measurement in the community services sector around Australia. There's around 8 or 9 publications related to that research work that they've done. And one of the really significant barriers that they identified for organisations getting started on outcome measurement was the lack of a common language. So the lack of a common language inside their organisation, but also a lack of a shared language between particularly not-for-profits and government funders. And so we all thought that we were talking about the same thing, but in actual fact, we're talking about different things. So very much, you know, so a common language is used, but I think that shared language has been developed as well.
Yeah.
You know, so there's been something kind of active and proactive around being really clear that when I say outcomes, this is what I mean. Is that what you mean too?
There's more in the chat, and apologies if I've overlooked your comment. Please feel free to jump in.
Lisa, because we're recording as well, we can go back to the chat and add these in, add anything we have missed into the slides.
Yes, one last one before we go from here. We hear people challenging one another, but do we know that? What are we assuming? What are our assumptions? Are we right to assume that's the case? So challenging assumptions.
Yeah, and look, and one of the amazing things that outcome measurement does, you know, particularly I think in the process of developing program logic at the beginning, and then as we move through and get our results, is that it really challenges some of the assumptions that we are making. And I think, you know, I've certainly witnessed, particularly in human services, what we see is some assumptions about a program working because of our relationship or our engagement with practitioners. You know, so, you know, I remember a family support worker at Wansley telling me, I know I get great results with families because they love me, right? And so, I mean, and absolutely a good, you know, a good working relationship is really important to achieving outcomes, but it's not the outcome in and of itself. You know, and so that question of, you know, challenging around assumptions, like, so how do we know that? All right.
One I like as well that I just noticed, less of, but we've always done it this way.
Yes.
Challenging ourselves.
All right, so what's it going to feel like then? I think we've probably got some words that we can use from that previous discussion as well. You know, I think it needs to feel safe but challenging at the same time.
Yeah.
How else is it going to feel? What's the vibe?
Water cooler conversations.
So that kind of to me says as well that those conversations are, you know, they're spontaneous. Here. They're spontaneous and there's something routine about them as well.
And they're normalised.
That's the word I'm looking for. Much more interesting than The Bachelor.
It feels energised. There's enthusiasm in the room.
Yeah.
Hi, it's
Period.
Janet here
Hello.
Sorry, it's Janet here from Shepparton, Family Care in Shepparton. One of the things that I have expressed to me from staff is that because outcomes are often, we very much try and keep them confidential, and so that people, they're not, when we get feedback, it's not directed to the person.
Yeah.
So giving them feedback that represents agency perspective takes away their personal feedback. You mentioned, oh, I know they're good outcomes because they tell me how much they like me. Well, actually, just because you've done a really great job with that person and that person has written in, it doesn't always equate that everybody's client writes in and tells. So there's an insecurity, a personal insecurity sensation around not getting direct feedback about themselves, and knowing that there's that intersection where they know what they're doing is good, but not getting direct feedback. So there's an insecurity around outcomes measures that can be very personal for people.
Yes.
How they receive them. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes. No, I hear what you're saying. And that goes the other way as well. I mean, one of the questions we often got at Wansley when we were introducing outcome measurement to our parenting program was, is this going to be used for performance review? So the kind of other end of that concern. And so it's very definitely a line that needs to be walked, and needs to be, the expectations and the impact, for practitioners needs to be really clear as well. And I think that goes back to that first one about it being safe. And so whatever safety looks like for your employees as well. So we used to, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, one of the harder things like we've had in New South Wales, and I know some with federal programs, is the issue of outcomes being actually driven by what government funding wants, and having to sell outcomes that may not be that attractive in a way that is attractive and does actually fit in with your organisational culture. And can be really difficult. I don't want to put a downer on this, but this is a reality that a lot of NGOs have faced, I suppose even councils and things as well. How to make them exciting when they were not really your outcomes.
When they're not your language. I mean, our experience often here as well is that what is sold to us as outcomes are actually outputs. Sorry.
Anna from ASRC. Can I add, on the flip side of some of the more positive feelings, I think it can also feel frustrating because you are doing that challenging, and there's that great quote that the truth will set you free, but first it will really piss you off. And I think that's the language, that's the experience that a lot of people have in the early days of sort of moving to an outcomes-focused approach.
Yeah. So I've added uncertainty there as well, because I think, that's part of can be part of the frustration as well, that we're attempting to understand what this means as it's unfolding.
And it actually does mean change, which is hard. And
and so I'm going to add the change process, but also that kind of funding disconnect in there as well.
And why are you talking about funding disconnect? There's also that funding connection with, you've got to prove, that the programs you deliver have to be, are expected to be evidence-based or evidence-informed, and they become like a widget that's sold within the sector. And yet, in reality, human services can't be seen as a widget in a free market, and that's one of the frustrations. I suppose I'd like to see that included in that frustration part, because you're kind of bound by what you're expected to deliver, because it needs to be a widget that's sellable, and for that matter, in order to get funding, you need it to show that it's, it measures up, so to speak.
Yeah, and some of that relationship work, which is so fundamental to achieving good outcomes in human services, gets lost in that as well. Yeah. And really, I mean, I guess, clearly in an hour, and we can't do it in a 2-day workshop either, is to solve that funding disconnect issue. What we talk about, and I think, that this is, is that as we better equip ourselves to be able to engage in those conversations and to advocate for, for language and process to be better recognised, that we can start to have some influence over how those outcomes are expressed, what kinds of measures are used as well, so that we're not necessarily just passive recipients of what happens, but that challenging can be taken outside the 4 walls of our organisations as well. All right, I'm just aware of time, so we will keep going. It's a little bit scary how quickly the time flies when you're having fun on Zoom. So, again, in that, you walk in, you see this thriving outcome measurement culture. So who's there? Who's contributing to that thriving culture?
The workers.
The workers.
Yes.
Practitioners.
Leadership in promoting the values.
Yeah.
Funders, the board.
Yep, funders.
Professional specialists in the area.
Admin staff too.
Can I add service users?
Service users. Oh yeah, I've got them up there. I might move service users to the top. Because again, that's fundamentally why we're doing outcome measurement work, is to track, monitor and improve the outcomes that we are working for with our service users. Whether that be individuals, families, communities.
And there's one that's mentioned a couple of times in the chat, which is a diverse range of voices.
Okay, yes.
I was just about to add the community, our local communities where we work.
Yeah.
And other service providers.
Yeah, I think that diverse range of voices is really important. I don't think outcome measurement won't be successful if it's purely top down, and it's not going to be successful if it's purely bottom up either, because decisions about resource allocation, etc., aren't made in that space, and so having that diversity of voices is really important. All right, and all right, we might leave the what you can touch, because I think that's probably quite similar to what does it look like, and I'm just aware of time, but it would include things like reports and minutes of meetings, and the charts that you can see on the wall, and all of those good things. All right, so the self-assessment tool, we gave you as really a bit of a guide to start thinking about what was already happening in your organisation. So you don't necessarily need to have completed it to be able to participate in the discussion, because it really is just a bit of a guidepost about, some of the things that have been identified as important for creating that space and getting started. So the first of those is around building capacity, sharing learning, having forums and structures for doing that. Leadership, as we've identified that in the previous discussion, that leadership comes from the top, but it also comes from your practitioners and your service users as well, and developing organisational culture. So what we are going to do, I'm not the tech person, so it's actually Aidan and Lisa that are going to do this. They're going to sort you into small groups of around about 5 or 6 people. So obviously introduce yourselves, and we would invite you to focus on, just 1 or 2 of those domains of readiness, and have a discussion about what's happening in your organisation, or perhaps what you've heard is happening in other organisations, what you are hoping to achieve in that particular domain in your organisation. As I said before, this is really your opportunity for some peer learning, and the groups are going to be happening fairly randomly, so hopefully as well some opportunities for different cross-jurisdictional learning, as well as from different sectors. So, and then we will, we're only going to have 5 minutes when we come back, but we will just quickly, get some feedback around what you've identified around those 4 areas as well. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Folks, you should see an invite to a room pop up in just a moment, and yeah, we will summon you back here in about 5 minutes.
Thanks, Aidan. That worked well.
Thanks, Aidan. All right, so maybe, because we do only have a few minutes left, and I need to give the last few minutes to Lisa to wrap us up. If maybe people could put into the chat then anything that they took away from that conversation, and maybe I'll just start. Yes, and Janet, yes, I think we all had some interrupted conversations there, or conversations that could have kept going. We started the inevitable kind of question around funding and resourcing, and that, I wish that I had the silver bullet for you. I really, really do. But I will share with Lisa to share with you a list of ideas that we've generated with the work that we've done at the CSI about how to kind of tap some different kinds of resources. Here in WA, we have a number of networks. So we have a not-for-profit research community of practice, where many of us have, said that we're willing to, talk to organisations about how they can get started, provide some peer review work. And we've certainly done some of that. I've seen Desiree and Wendy are part of that group. We've done some of that internally around, checking with, have you used this tool before? Was it useful? Was it appropriate for use with Aboriginal populations? Some of those kinds of questions. There's also a WA Social Research Network, which again, people have been willing to share knowledge. So tapping into whatever kind of existing networks are there, and having conversations with people. The other, one of the other suggestions is around engaging expert volunteers. So certainly Know Volunteering WA have an expert volunteer program where you can access, people who have some expertise and experience in outcome measurement. I did some volunteering with a social enterprise a couple of years ago, where we got a fairly basic outcome measurement framework in place for them. One of the things they wanted to know about was outcomes with their customers, so in their cafe. It gave them enough to then make a pitch to get some external funding to do a bigger piece of work around social impact. And they've now been able to engage a consultancy firm to do that work. Yeah, I mean, so there is this suggestion then, you know, like maybe it is a good seminar to do around, yeah, how do you access different kinds of resources and expertise when funding is just, yeah, inevitably a challenge.
With 3 minutes to go, would anyone else like to offer feedback from their groups? Very quickly, I was in group 2. Thank you everyone who joined me for that. Everyone spoke at varying stages on the journey, but by and large, you know, have at least one of the elements coming through more strongly than perhaps the others. Sharing learning seems to be a common challenge. Building capacity, yes, but it's limited. And just the need for regular reviews. It was a very useful tool. Thank you.
All right, so Lisa, did you want me to wrap up or would you like to wrap up?
I'm happy to, you can.
Okay.
Well, I think what I must do is thank you, Katrina, because you've shared a lot with us today, not just your time, but your own insights and sector experience, just general kind of awesomeness. Thank you so much for that. I think we need to get you back sooner rather than later, so let's chat. But to everyone else, thank you very much for your time. For me, this is the first more interactive session I've been involved in, so thank you, it was great. I think more of this is, you know, needed as well, so watch this space. I've sent you a quick survey, a follow-up survey, so please share your comments, your feedback in that. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to send out the recording. I'll try and include Katrina's slides as well, because when we did our group piece, we all fed into those slides, so you can have them to refer back to. For those of you who are new to CIMNA, join us. As I said at the outset, we are a network, a learning network of members across the country. Membership starts at just $60 a year. It's really very little when you can benefit from people and knowledge such as this and grow that with your own input. So please join us. And finally, at the bottom of my survey, you'll see reference to the CIMNA Awards. We run this awards program every year. This is year number 6. It really is your opportunity to tell us your social impact measurement story. We're not looking for, you know, fireworks and, oh, it was all wonderful. We know it's not. There are bumps at every turn in every road. But these are the stories that we'd love you to share with us, please, because then we can bring them to forums like this and talk about the work that you're doing. So please look at it. It's all on the CIMNA website, www.cimna.com.au. Thank you all.
Lisa, I will just actually take the last word, if that's all right. So I have put a link in the chat for you, WA. So as I say, the Centre for Social Impact do run a 2-day workshop on outcome measurement. We've done about 8 or 9 here in WA now. Paul Flatow, who's the director of the CSI here at UWA, ran the first online version last week. There is a face-to-face one coming up in WA at the end of October and another online one, which Paul will be doing in November, I think. Unless, you know, you kind of worry that I'm promoting something outside of CIMNA. CIMNA WA has a very strong relationship with the Centre for Social Impact at UWA. And some of the material that we've used today is derived from that workshop as well. So, you know, we have a shared interest in promoting and developing outcome measurement in the community services sector so that we can all contribute to growing better outcomes for our communities. So, yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. We love the shout out. Of course, I'm keen to do. Thanks again, everyone. That's a wrap.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Well done. Bye.